Good morning, everyone. And a big thank you to our guests. We're here to talk about music. And before we ask what your organizations do, I wanted to set the stage and ask, AI, can AI music be groundbreaking? Can it be as unique as the Beatles or Jimi Hendrix or Beethoven?
It's a big start.
Okay, start with you, Carol.
Start off with a
easy question.
Yeah, an easy question. I think when I think about AI, it was like through the full entire stack. I think the obvious one is like music generation and helping artists compose and write songs. Then I started like digging into like music production crowd. Then you looked at like the labels and then like the front of house marketing tools. And I think AI is, we agree, is like the superpower. So how do you use AI to become super creative? So for me, I was really looking at how do artists become super creative, because I view them as like the most creative humans on earth who have made this their profession. How would they do it? And then see how that impacts society and humanity later on. I think it has great potential, and I think for the last few years I've been digging into exactly that question on where is the value and how can we make the pie bigger. And recent surveys have also showed that the number one job that young people want to do is to be an influencer. So how does that type of creativity also utilize AI to create content and put that out?
What about you, Ed? What's your perspective?
I think I've seen innovative things be done with AI music. Absolutely. When I was at Stability AI, our audio team released a product called Stable Audio, and it was basically a sample generator. And you could get it to do some pretty wacky things. Like one of my favorite things that one of our team produced was, I think the prompt he used was hammering wood at 128 beats per minute. And like it came out with this weird combination of like a kind of hammering sound effect, but in like a drum beat form. And I think sample generation in general is something where this tech is already being adopted, and you can get some innovative stuff out of it. I think, unfortunately, though, like a lot of what is produced with a lot of the systems out there at the moment is incredibly derivative, right? People call it slop, and I think that's like a pretty good term for it. So I think that the majority is not going to be, musically innovative in that way, I think.
Well,
I might also follow up and just also push that like AI could. The same thing can be said about humans, right? I think a lot of the stuff that we also produce, at least to start with, is also incredibly derivative or trying to copy chords. So I agree. I think that maybe AI could be used as a challenger to push us to be better. Could be one lens to also look at. But I do feel like it's an inflection point where it could be a lot of slop and derivative music, and AI might just streamline everything to be the same derivative music. So I'm looking for us to really push that boundary.
Right. And well, tell us what your organization does, DeepMusic.ai.
Yeah. I think 5 years ago, I had just sold my company, which was in self-driving cars, which had a large impact on society, and I was looking for what could be the next big disruption. And I went through my own existential crisis. I'm like, what if AI reached the point where it could replace human creativity? Because we sat on panels, and I always had said, if your job is in the creative, you're going to be safe. And I was like, what happens if that assumption isn't true? Like, what would that look like? And what if we were to let AI replace the creative side, the stuff that I enjoy doing? What would that look like? Or how could I find a way to like utilize and lean into AI so that that could become a new area? Or so I really wanted to partner with artists and people who were more creative than me. I'm an entrepreneur, and I think that's like one set of creativity, but I couldn't figure out how to like systematically break down how I went through my creative process. I know that sometimes I just get inspired and a light went on my head, but I started talking to different types of creatives, trying to figure out how they went through their process, and had landed with the San Francisco Symphony. I was working with them and composers and musicians, trying to understand that. And so I created this nonprofit with one of my dear friends from grad school who is a artist, Hillary Hahn. Like, it was during COVID, so she was not touring. And so we had like a 3-hour beautiful conversation about what happens if AI was to disrupt her career. because I had seen that in the self-driving car space where 8 graduate students from Stanford, we were able to put a car out in 3 months on the streets driving around Mountain View. So I could see the acceleration of AI, and I knew that it was coming for creatives very soon and wanted to help the artists not be reactionary, but if they were to lean into it and band together and understand the tools, like, and be part of the companies that were building these tools, how would that change like the course of humanity? That was my 2018 revelation and what I was been trying to unpack since then.
Fantastic. And tell us about Fairly Trained, Ed.
Fairly Trained's a nonprofit I set up about a year ago. I've worked in generative AI since 2010, and for about 12 years since I joined generative AI to about 2022, people didn't train their models on copyrighted work without a license. Everyone knew it was illegal. No one did it. They trained research models, but they would never commercialize it. But then in 2022, a few big companies you've all heard of started releasing commercial models and threw caution to the wind. I ended up working at another generative AI company, and eventually I quit that company because I thoroughly object to this unlicensed training. I think it's illegal and I think it's unethical. And so I set up Fairly Trained to, we're a nonprofit. What we do is we certify generative AI companies that don't take that approach. We certify generative AI companies that don't claim that they can scrape the life's work of the world's creators and train vast commercial models on it.
The good guys.
Well, I think so, but everyone thinks they're the good guys,
And then you've also supported or had your petition signed by 12,000 creatives, including The Cure's Robert Smith and Radiohead singer Tom York, calling for compensation for artists.
Yeah, it's tripled. We have 36,000
36,000,
okay. This was a statement we put out like a month ago, and it's a 29-word statement. The wording, it's still available for signatures. If you happen to agree with this, we're in San Francisco, so you probably don't. But if you happen to agree with this, the statement is the unlicensed use of creative works for generative AI training is a major unjust threat to the livelihoods of the people behind those works and must not be permitted. That's the entire thing. It's been signed by a lot of creators, including a lot of well-known creators, but more importantly, like thousands upon thousands of working creative professionals who you probably haven't heard of and whose lives are being impacted by this right now. So if you do agree, please go and sign it. It's still open. It's still rising.
And now the music industry has sued a couple AI music engines. What should we think about that, Carol?
I agree that they need to be compensated, acknowledged. I do think that technology has disrupted the music industry many times over, from like sampling electronic music. And this is another new tool that is coming, and they need to be, I think, fairly compensated. I think it's great that they're standing up and doing something about it. Another approach is, I think it's also interesting that some artists have openly created models of their voice so that the public can utilize it and they can rev share things. So I feel like there's new business models that need to be created. We need to be experimenting with them, but I do 100% agree that the rev needs to be split. They need to feel fairly, not just monetarily compensated, but I think acknowledged for their work. There need to be ways to spot if that has been not upheld. I think what Ed is doing is fantastic, and I think really banding the artists together to have a community and a place to talk and have conferences like this is important.
Right. And Ed, what kind of compensation scheme do you envision? Is there a right one?
I don't think there's a right one, actually. I think there's I think often AI companies will turn around and say, well, come on then, rights holders, creators, what's the silver bullet for how this should work? And I don't think there has to be one. The beauty of licensing, and licensing is clearly the solution, I think, here, right? The beauty of licensing is that two parties can come together and figure out a deal and figure out what works for them. That's not going to be the same for everyone. One person is going to want an upfront payment. One person is going to want a revenue share. Stability AI, I did licensing deals like this with creators, and we put in place a revenue share with music creators whose music we trained on. And I think that kind of model can be great because no one really knows how much money a lot of these things are going to make, but a revenue share can work really well. There is this there is this argument that AI companies often give in legal filings as well, where they will say, well, it's kind of, it's not feasible that we could pay everyone. These payments would be so small, like kind of what's the point of paying people? And to that I say, you've obviously not been a creator yourself and like got small royalty checks from Spotify or whatever it is, right? Like just because a payment is small doesn't mean a creator doesn't want it, and it doesn't give you the right to take their work without permission. So that's my view. I think you've got to start from licensing and consent, and you work from there. And if people don't want to be involved because you're not offering them enough money, then you don't use their work, and it's as simple as that.
Yeah. Carol, what will AI ultimately mean for the jobs of musicians, do you think?
Yeah, I think a lot about like the future of work and where people go and how we utilize our time. It's undeniable that it will be disrupted. There'll be a lot of jobs replaced, particularly things related to maybe like music for commercials or royalty-free music, that type of thing. I don't know how much joy those artists have creating the music, but there is a paycheck there, and I do think that like those lesser created, those type of jobs might be more easily replaced because it will be cheaper using like AI-generated music, or you could have personalized music and your own lyrics. But I do think there's always room for like true creators, or like I do think that more people will be jumping in. I feel like music seems, I've worked in many different applications, and music seems to be really one that resonates with the majority of the public. I feel like music touches people. It gets them through hard times, or they themselves want to express themselves a certain way. So I think there'll be more artists than ever before, and people would be able to use the tools. And I think what we need to work on now is really the interface to these tools. If you guys have played around with a lot of the tools that are available, I think they're fun for a while, but the stickiness level doesn't seem to quite be there. And what I'm interested in is, how do we get people to come back to the tools? I think there is something with personalization. People love like AI bias for things that are personal for their life or their album, photo album, and they want personalized music, but it doesn't seem to be something that has any stickiness right now. So I think a lot of work needs to be done on the interface side.
Right. And Ed, what % of the music industry do you think is doing it right now, following copyright that you believe they should?
Well, I mean, in the AI world, there are lots of companies who are licensing all their training data. So Fairly Trained has certified 16 AI music companies involved in AI music who don't use copyrighted work without a license. It's the absolute minority of companies in the music space who are training on the world's music without permission. And the two most prominent are Suno and Udio, and they've both been sued for huge amounts of money by the record labels. And I'm sure if other people follow their footsteps, they'll be sued as well. So yeah, a lot of AI music companies are doing the right thing. Like, I encourage you to check them out. They're on our Fairly Trained website. I agree with Carol. I think that there are good use cases for some AI music. I think one thing we saw recently, was like Randy Travis, the country singer, who had a stroke, using AI voice models to recreate his voice and be able to release new music. And there are these sort of empowering stories, but unfortunately, I think right now it's pretty unavoidable that the main use case of AI music will be essentially the commodification of music. There isn't text-to-music models. I agree with Carol. I mean, that retention, that real use case. For a long time, people were thinking, where's the mid-journey for music, right? Loads of people use that, and then a couple came along. And how many songs about your trip to the coffee shop do you really want? Honestly, like, text-to-music is not the answer. So I think there's a lot of work to do in the AI music world to find the really good applications. And unfortunately, as I say, I think commodification is gonna be the most scalable one, and that's something I'm not thrilled about personally.
Right. So, well, let's look ahead 5 years from now. Do you think we'll have an AI Taylor Swift? Is that possible? Carol?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that the goal is never to like mimic the artist, right? I think Taylor Swift is a powerhouse, and her job is which
I'm saying
where
more
she-
of
yes.
a
No, but
star on her caliber, on her level.
yeah, I think what is so amazing about her is that she is the entire full stack. It seems like from songwriter to like CEO to like paying those bonuses, and to all the crew and everyone running this company. So she's like an empire, and I think that is interesting to see how she markets herself, how she connects with the community, and I think AI can help like an artist that doesn't have her efficiency, productivity, like really like use her as a business model to learn all the different aspects of her job, and maybe utilize AI if you don't have as powerful of a team to be able to do some of that. So while that is interesting to have, we've seen like AI avatars, you can go to hologram concerts, you know, there. Like I think Kim Kardashian, for instance, is interesting because she puts out so much content. So can you imagine like a superstar like Marilyn Monroe being like just the team behind her constantly putting out 24/7 content with her singing things and doing deep fakes, and now all the eyeballs of our world are watching like only 5 characters. So I see that future happening where there's only a few superstars, and it becomes harder for independent artists to break into that level and get the average consumer's attention. And I think what DeepMusic is working on, besides the machine of the artist, is what are new ways to utilize AI that you can't do by yourself. So we are looking at like neuroscience and brain activity, live performances, and getting the mood of a crowd to affect a performance during the stage, live composition, visuals for music, robot dancing with ballerinas. You know, I feel like new types of art forms, and trying to figure out what is interesting, that isn't a gimmick, that has staying power, that could be a new way to appreciate art, as well as behind the scenes for like dynamic pricing and helping some of these like art houses thrive in this phase.
Great. I want to thank our panelists for joining us and talking about the future of music. I'm looking forward to how it turns out. I hope the musicians get their due. Thank you very much. Please.